I'm hoping there's a romance, okay? Assuming. What? How is this book gonna age? Who's gonna remember Vines? I think I've cracked the code. I think I know what kind of reader you are, and I respect it. Today, I am starting the 4th episode of Meet the Booktuber vlogging series, in which I just get to highlight a booktuber that I absolutely enjoy. I can't wait to get to know them even better through the book recommendations that they give me, and then through that, you get to know them too. I have 3 recommendations from this booktuber, and I'm so excited to get started. We have XO Joe as my 4th guest, and the way this is gonna work is that she provided me with 3 very different novels to basically consume, hopefully thoroughly enjoy, and yeah, you just get to enjoy the process as it goes, and hopefully by the end, or right now, you decide to subscribe to her because she's amazing and she's just such a lovely person. I am so excited to be highlighting Joe because she has been someone that I've been connected with on BookTube for quite some time. I distinctly remember her commenting on one of my videos once, and I was like, oh my gosh, she looks nice. And then I went to her channel, supported her, and we've just kind of been orbiting around each other ever since. So I was like, this is the perfect time for us to reconnect again, for me to let everyone else know that she exists. And so here we are. Before we get to the 3 books though, I do just want to highlight Joe a little bit more. She has had some really excellent content on her channel as of late, including a romance vlog where she reads a boxing romance with her boxing coach in tow. She also has done a really thoughtful reflection on what it's like to be on BookTube, Instagram, the pressures of those 2 social media platforms, among others, and why that might cause reading slumps, something that we all really hate to be in, and why is that something we hate to be in? What are the pressures involving a dreaded reading slump? And I found it so thoughtful. I felt seen. I highly recommend that video. But she also does really interesting get ready with me wrap-ups every single month too. On top of that, just like vlogging in general. She's really good at vlogging, something that I'm still really bad at. As I do a vlog right now, I recognize the issue with that statement, but I'm doing my best. I'm still learning. And so just go support Joe. She's amazing, and I promise you will fall in love with her content, and just her bubbly personality. But what 3 books am I reading? Well, the first one is The City of Brass. You can see I have already started it. I'm only 1 chapter in, so I really can't say much about the plot or what's going on, but I do have the audiobook. I'm reading it immersively, and I feel like that's a good choice because it seems like it's gonna get pretty complex. Even in the first chapter, I was like, okay, there's a lot of moving parts. This is an adult fantasy. It's the first in the David Bad trilogy, and actually this trilogy is getting a lot of press, I suppose we can call it, on BookTube. A book fiend named Mel is one of the co-hosts for a read-along going on with the David Bad series, so I'm really excited that I actually get to adjacently participate in that by starting the first book a little late, because I think they started the first book in March and it is April. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I like the setting, that it is 18th century Cairo. The main character is intriguing me at the moment, Nari, and there seems to be a lot of moving parts as far as where we are in time and space historically with this elements of magic, of jinns. I don't know, I'm intrigued. The next book I'm probably going to be reading is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. This is a book I've never heard of. The other 2, I've definitely heard of them, but this one, when I was given it by Joe, I was like, what is this book? I don't know it. I'm pretty sure this is a YA contemporary. I'm going in very blind. Obviously, there's going to be a character named Ava Lavender, I'm assuming, but beyond that, I'm actually very excited to be entering blind. I don't want to look into anything else. I'm not going to be reading the back or the internal flap because I want it to be a surprise. We're gonna see if that's a good experiment or if that was a bad idea for me. And the 3rd book I'm reading for this vlog is The Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. This one is one I've definitely heard of. I'm more aware or more familiar with Cemetery Boys, but I actually haven't read anything by this author before, so this is gonna be a new experience with Aiden Thomas, and I'm really looking forward to it because the cover is super intriguing. It's a YA fantasy, so admittedly that's a bit more in my wheelhouse. If I have read fantasy in the past, it has been YA, even though I'm not a big YA reader. I know that's a contradiction, that doesn't make any sense, but when it comes to YA, fantasy is one of the ones I will lean on. So yeah, this seems like it's probably the most sure thing of the three. So I guess it works out that I'll be rounding out the vlog with it. Crossing my fingers. Per usual though, no matter what happens with these 3 books, I'm just so grateful that I have yet another booktube friend who is taking a leap of faith, who's gladly giving me 3 books to recommend to me, and oh my gosh, I'm so grateful to Joe. So thank you so much, Joe, for being yet another guinea pig in this project, and I'm genuinely looking forward to these 3 books. I think it's going to be really great that all 3 of them are outside of my comfort zone in one way or another, and this is going to be a fun experience. On to the vlog! We are kicking off Meet the Booktuber episode 4 with City of Brass. I am 40% in. I would have given an earlier update, but I kind of forgot that I needed to do that. I've been hosting reading sprints as like a great motivator to kind of get through the book, especially because, you know, adult fantasy is really intimidating for me. And the one thing I will say before I get into the book is how lovely and supportive everyone has been for the past 2 weeks. I've just been mainly reading this book on sprints on my channel, and I have a lot of friends in the comments and on screen who are big adult fantasy fans who love City of Brass, and they've just been so patient. They're like, don't worry, Leandra, if you're confused, just keep going. You're meant to be confused, and then things will start clicking. There's like mysteries, there's questions that you're supposed to be asking yourself, so this is all normal. So it's been really nice to see like the fantasy community on BookTube, who I have a lot of friends that are within, have just been like super kind, and they're like, you're doing great, Leandra, and I'm like, thanks, friends. So with that said, I am really invested. I'm finding this really fascinating. I am really happy that I have the audiobook because it's keeping it at a clip, but I think I'd be invested anyway. I appreciate that I have the audiobook though, because it's providing me with certain pronunciations that I probably would have struggled with. And also we do have the, you know, alterations of voices, so I know who's speaking, even as I'm trying to juggle and remember names, because, you know, I'm at page 216. I'm kind of close to halfway. I think I'm about 100 pages away, but there's still so many working parts, so many characters I'm meeting at this point and trying to understand their backstories, their motivations, and how they all relate to each other, that it has been a little bit overwhelming, but I'm still having a really good time, and I think that things are starting to click. And I think what's helping is I feel a little bit more grounded in one character's POV than I do in the other, and I've been able to lean on the one I understand a bit better during times of kind of confusion, being like, okay, well, I feel good here, so I can kind of use more of my mental processes to understand the other. I'm speaking vaguely. Well, there are 2 POVs. One of them is following Nari, the con woman that I knew, having read the first sentence on the back of the book. She is just so tenacious. I really love her sass. I love her dialogue. She's really sharp, and she's just resourceful. You can tell that she's calculating every time she approaches someone or feels as though she needs to tackle a certain subject, if she feels threatened. And I really love her energy. I really love her backstory, and she's someone that I'm so intrigued by. Every time we get a chapter with her, I'm just like, yes, we're with Nari. Basically, she is just doing her best to survive in Cairo. She thieves. She also lies to, you know, very wealthy noblemen to get their money, but she also doesn't necessarily lie all the time. She actually has certain magical abilities that are like full-on true abilities. She can heal herself if she gets cut. She also can sense the health of others, like if someone has maybe a mass, or if there's like a rattle or a certain smell to them, like in their throat, she can tell that they probably don't have much longer to live. And she is struggling, but it's a struggle that she knows. It's a struggle that is familiar to her in this city that doesn't really provide much forgiveness. And she has this really great rapport with one of the pharmacists, because what she wants to do is study medicine, and especially with her abilities, that would be a perfect career for her. But because she's a woman in the 18th century, that just isn't possible. She's also an orphan. She doesn't really know her background. So there's just so many different reasons for why she doesn't have that future in store for her. However, at one time, this one con ends up going really horribly wrong. She's performing at this czar. She's meant to kind of interact with a child that's supposedly possessed by a djinn, and it doesn't go well for her. It ends up bringing to her this like Deva, who's kind of a djinn, and he's furious that she has pretty much summoned him with her song. And then there's chaos. People are after her, but what this Deva has to do, named Dara, he basically is like, I need to bring you to Daevabad. Like, that's the only solution. And so they go off on this like epic journey, you know, across all of Egypt, and they're trying to get to Daevabad, and it's just it's been really interesting seeing their relationship grow. I really like the dynamic between Nari and Dara, especially because they are both misunderstood by each other, but as they're traveling, they get to know each other a little bit better, and I'm hoping there's a romance, okay? Sue me. Then we come to the perspective that I think I'm having a bit more of a struggle with. One, because I'm just not as interested in it, and two, it's a bit more complicated because there's so many more characters, because Ali is in Daevabad, so he's interacting with so many different people. He happens to be the prince of the current king, and it's a bit of a messy situation because his mother comes from a different tribe of the Jinn. So he's apparently really judged for the fact that he is mixed blood, and he's also, you know, warring with what he thinks is, you know, his moral duties. There's a lot of conspiracies going on amongst the royalty and across the different kind of territories within Daevabad. It seems like different neighborhoods have different ethics, and the policing is also an issue. So there's just a lot of layering going on, and I am finding that really like helpful to understand, especially as we delve into the historical influence of how modern Daevabad is the way it is. But I'm also less interested in Ali's POV. So that's like the one critique I'd have, I suppose, is that I find his POV a bit less interesting and a bit more confusing. So it's not a great combination, but honestly, Nari is my girl. I absolutely adore her. She's the reason why I need to just keep reading. Ah, and that flop, you've gotta love it. Okay, I'm gonna go continue to read, and I will see you in my next update. I am very proud to say that I am 70% through The City of Brass, meaning that I'm at page 368, yes, and let's just take a moment, appreciate how far we've come. All of this I've read, and I feel like I'm crushing it. As someone who doesn't really read chunky reads, I'm really proud of how well I've been able to follow this narrative and continue to be motivated to finish it. I will say that the only kind of disappointment that's going on is I still don't feel much investment in Ali and his POV. What's happening in his POV, I'm really invested in. I'm really interested, especially his interactions. There was a scene between him and Dara, and I was like, this is gold. Like, I really want to know what's going on. I also really wanted Dara to kick his ass, and he kind of did, I'm not gonna lie. And I was like, yes, Dara, you get him. Because the thing is Ali's also bothering me. He's kind of annoying me a little bit, and that's a bit strong of a word. I wouldn't say annoying, but I'm getting frustrated by how naive he is, by how he's demonizing this other side without even really thinking about how much history and how manipulated he has been by the history books written by his own side. It's like, of course they're going to have you view the war and all the atrocities through a lens that makes them look like they're the righteous, best people, the good guys. And I'm just like, dude, can we please pause and reflect on how silly you're being? I think the reason why his POV is grating on me a bit more is because I'm not finding the same reprieve in Nari's perspective as I was at the beginning of the book. I still am really invested in her, and I wish that honestly we could just follow her POV the entire time because I really love her character. But what I mean is that she has been separated from Dara, and I was so invested in them getting to know each other, in learning about each other's strengths, their weaknesses, and just bonding over the fact that both of them have been alienated from their societies. Her in Cairo, and also now in Daevabad, and him in Daevabad, and just how they both have been survivors, how they've had to be resilient when it comes to the trauma, the conflict, the really bad hand that the world has dealt them. And for various reasons, he's been separated from her now that they've arrived at Daevabad, and I'm just like, I really want them back. And I feel as though I've lost a third protagonist that I really, really enjoyed because Dara is kind of coming in and out of scenes. So that's one criticism that I'll have, is that I don't feel as, you know, as balanced in the narration style because the characters aren't doing what I want them to do. It's fine, whatever. Well, I've got 150 pages to go before I tell you my overall thoughts, my rating, and everything else. But Joe, honestly, thank you for pushing me outside of my comfort zone no matter what happens, because this has been a really good experiment so far. I finished City of Brass about an hour or so ago, and then I remembered I actually need to tell you all what I think. So I did give myself time to process, and you can tell that Chakraborty is a really strong writer, and I really enjoyed the adventure that she took us on. Am I kind of disappointed? A little bit, mainly because this happens so often with big books, especially really complex books. The ending almost feels rushed, and I don't know if we can avoid it because there's so much building up, there's so much world building, and then the climax happens and you're just like, wait a second, this is all happening too fast. And after I gave you an update about 70% in, I want to say I hit the 75% or 80% mark. Like, I literally only read 30, 40 more pages after that, and everything happened. And I was starting to question the actions that some of these characters were taking. I didn't find it very believable, and I started actually kind of getting frustrated with the position that all of these people like put Nari in, because she's coming from a place of no knowledge. She doesn't know anything about David Bad. She didn't realize it existed. She didn't realize the complexities of, you know, the political divisions and the cultural positions, the different types of Jinn and Deva, and how they've been warring for so long. And everyone seems to get really frustrated with her very easily. And I just keep thinking, well, you haven't helped her learn anything. Like, you've actually not told her anything. For instance, there's this nurse, I'll say, a mentor named Nisreen, who takes her under her wing. Apparently, she was close with Nari's, I suppose, relatives, we'll say. And she's supposed to help her, and she does nothing. She gets so frustrated with Nari, and I'm like, because you didn't tell her anything. Of course she doesn't know anything. Of course she doesn't know Deva customs and everything else in between. What are you talking about? It was really, really frustrating. And then there was just so much action that I didn't understand what was happening and what led to it. Dara, he started acting really erratically, and I didn't really know why he was doing things so spontaneously. Ali has consistently been a character that has frustrated me because of his naivety and because he is just so dense. Why is it so hard for him to realize how his world is working when he's lived in it? I understand why Nari doesn't know anything and she's doing the best she can. She's a survivor. But Ali was really grating on me. His brother Mutadir is the worst. I actually think I hate him by the end of the book because he just, every single thing that came out of his mouth, I'm like, you're dumb. Like, you shut up right now. So I am kind of frustrated by what some of these characters have done. Am I still super invested? Yeah. The only worry I have is that the way this book ended, I actually think I need to get spoiled for me to feel confident that I can get further into the series, that I can take a chance on book 2, because something happened and I'm like, if this doesn't get resolved in the way I want it to, I don't know if I want to continue. Isn't that crazy? Which just goes to show you too that this book has made me feel every emotion under the sun. So Joe, you were right to recommend this to me because I'm feeling so many things. With that said, when it comes to the rating, I don't know what to give it. I actually don't. I'm in between a 3 and a 4. And I hope that those who absolutely love this aren't offended by a 3, and I don't think that a 3 is bad, but there are some character, you know, depictions that frustrate me, and I'm a really hugely character-driven reader, so when characters are acting erratically and also the pace of the ending is going so fast, that's too jarring for me. So I am kind of questioning some of the author's choices and how she decided to have this specific installment end. But yeah, so that's how I'm feeling right now. I will update you all, I suppose, on my official thoughts once we kind of get further into the vlog and I can kind of settle on what kind of rating I want to give it. But wow, all the emotions. I am halfway through the Sunbearer Trials. Do I regret not updating you earlier? 100%. But you know what? It is what it is. And I'm going to do my best to let you know what has happened so far, what the major players are, and what I'm projecting as far as my feelings and anticipation for the second half of the book. This is a YA fantasy that involves gods, especially gods from indigenous lore, specifically Latinx, Central America, South America. That's my understanding of it. And I am pairing this with the audio, and it's been so lovely, actually. The voice narrator is doing a great job, especially because there are certain words, certain phrases, certain gods' names that I would be butchering because I've never heard them before. It's a new kind of culture, a new type of mythology that I'm just not as exposed to. So I can recommend the voice narrator because honestly, he's doing such a good job. Speaking of who he's representing, I suppose he's our main character, Teo. And Teo is a really fun character. He is actually pretty optimistic, but he's also very snarky. I would say he's the like cinnamon roll with an edge. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we definitely have a grumpy to his sunshine in a bit of a romance going on, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This is very much Hunger Games, but with gods, specifically demigods. I guess that's why I've also heard the comparison to Percy Jackson. And I actually, it's been years since I've read Hunger Games, but I am enjoying it, I think, a little bit more. I like the changes, the differences, the fact that we're working with demigods and the trials that they're going through are part of like an ancient old practice to kind of keep the world going as it's gone, to protect humanity, as well as gods, demigods, all of the flora and fauna that sustain themselves on the earth. There's definitely some themes of climate fiction. I really, really enjoy the environmentalism, the descriptions of the environment, of these beautiful creatures that our demigods are interacting with in this world. Honestly, this is definitely my bread and butter. Anything to do with natural description, being in these like tropical jungle, just interesting environments. We've had them on a mountain. We've had them in hot springs. It's been quite a trip, quite a whirlwind, I will say. To actually provide you with the plot, our main character, Teo, is a demigod. His mother is Quetzal, and that gives him certain abilities. Predominantly, he has wings growing from his back. He's able to fly. He's able to speak to other birds. And I really like those powers. They're pretty subtle, but I enjoy seeing them in action throughout the book. And it's really surprising that he's been selected, especially because typically during this ceremony, it is the golds. They are part of a certain kind of class of god / demigod, I suppose, that are trained, preparing for this. They go to an academy, and they're the ones expected to be chosen. And most of the people chosen are from the golds, but we have 2 additions, and they're from the jades. And of course, it is just completely a surprise that we have 2 jades in the mix, including Teo, and they have to just kind of prove themselves, because in these trials, there are the people who will survive. Specifically, the winner ends up being the sun bearer, and I think that they have the job of lighting certain torches. I don't know, I didn't really pay attention to that. But the main thing that I'm most concerned about is that if you are at the bottom of the ranking, if you are in dead last, you end up becoming a sacrifice. And that doesn't sound great. So Teo and his 2 friends, Nia, who's a part of the golds, but she's a bit of an outcast and is Teo's friend, and also Shio. Shio is the other jade. The 3 of them have decided to kind of come together and try to prevent one of them from being the bottom person, who would then be the sacrifice. I am really enjoying the creativity that's being put into the trials. Each stage is very different. They're being tested on different qualities. There are some weird elements, I'm not going to lie. Specifically, the language and the high-tech elements. It's just, I don't really know what this genre is, because you think it's fantasy, but they are dealing with some like advanced technology. I think they've got cell phones, they've got social media, and there's also some really like current modern day uses of phrases, idioms, Vine references that I'm just like, I'm sorry, these demigods know what Vine was? And also, what? How is this book gonna age? Who's gonna remember Vines? That's the one thing I'm questioning. For instance, there's this one Vine that we have Nia say, and I'm just like, Nia, how do you know this? It's the like 2 dudes sit in a hot tub 5 feet apart because they're not gay. Girl, what are you doing? How do you know this? Aside from the random Vines that I'm seeing in this book, we do have some really cool trans rep and just honestly an acknowledgement of gender fluidity. I love that Teo is trans as well as Shio, and Teo is kind of taking Shio under his wing, letting him know that it's okay to be questioning yourself, to be wondering about these things, and to not have all of the answers. And Teo is letting Shio know that it's a longer process, that you aren't just gonna wake up one day and everything's gonna be exactly as you want it. Like, you're gonna go through stages, both mentally, emotionally, and physically, and it's all gonna be at a different pace. So I really have enjoyed that. And in this world, once you realize your gender is not as it has been presented. You have this beautiful gender confirmation ceremony, a celebration that is apparently just bigger even than your birthday, and it is really accepted among the gods, the demigods, and I find that really sweet, and I really do enjoy that representation. So besides the kind of like very weird language that it definitely takes me out of it, and the fact that, again, these demigods have social media accounts and they're demigod influencers, everything else I'm really liking. I have no idea what's gonna continue with this book. I imagine we're gonna have a more romantic tension between Teo and his love interest, the grumpier Aurelio, because they've got some history. They definitely have some baggage to clear up, but I do like them together as well. And I feel as though they're very chill, even as they know that someone in their group is going to die at the end of this. So that's the one thing I'm like, everyone needs to actually take their lives a little bit more seriously at the moment. But I am excited to continue, and I will let you know what I think when I finish. I have finished the Sunbearer Trials, so we are 2 books of 3 for Meet the Booktuber. Oh, thanks to Joe from XO Joe with these recommendations. And I genuinely am a little bit regretting how I handled, or I guess like performed my update for 50% of the way, because I just don't think I did the book justice as far as the complexities and the diversity on the page. I think I mentioned that we do have 2 trans characters and they're really well done, but we also have Defrep, one of the semidioses, one of the demigods, Desi. He is deaf, and they do a really excellent job of having someone always providing him with sign language so he can follow what's going on. And I thought that was really seamless as far as that type of representation goes. But anyways, so we're gonna just move forward and know that at this point, I'm hoping that I finally do the book justice, because I did really enjoy it. It was super fun. I was so invested, and I'm not going to lie, if book 2 were published right now, if it was, you know, out in the world and I could get it, I would 100% be picking it up ASAP, because it ended on a certain cliffhanger with certain adventures in store that I need to know how this continues, which is really lovely. And it helped me actually process my thoughts about City of Brass a little bit better, because I did have 2 books that are first in a series. And while one, I'm a bit hesitant, depending on how the series continues, whether I feel as though it's worth it for me to continue. This one, I 100% know that it's worth it for me to continue, because I care about the characters so much. Teo and Nia and Shio, and there's been so much that's happened, and I have so many good questions that I don't feel as frustrated as I kind of did at the end of City of Brass with certain actions from characters. This one I felt was actually, it aligned really well with the character development, and a lot of things clicked in my mind, especially with the ending scenes, when I was like, oh, that's why a character was acting this way, or oh, this actually tracks. The character, as far as they've progressed throughout the novel, they would act this way in the end. So all of this was really well done. My only critique continued to be, I guess, and it's not a critique as far as the author shouldn't have done this. I think it's just that for me, my type of understanding of fantasy, as I'm slowly getting used to fantasy, I have certain preferences. And one thing that as much as I can understand why it's there, especially because this is YA, I just didn't care about the social media. Like, I don't know why these characters had to have social media in this world. And I guess it makes sense because the trials are being televised, so you already know that there is technology throughout this society, but it was just a little bit weird. I will say I loved how we got some Spanish language influence. So instead of Instagram, it was Instagrafia. And then instead of YouTube, I think it was TuTube. And I was like, okay, that's pretty fun. And I also just wasn't a huge fan of some of the dialogue. It definitely read a bit too YA for me. And usually YA fantasy, you don't have to deal with that because the characters aren't really going to be speaking in contemporary language that we're used to today. But I just think that some of it probably won't age super well, depending on, you know, how our own linguistic kind of culture progresses with every passing year and as social media influences us in that way. So with that said, because those are kind of preferences and issues, and I still thoroughly enjoyed the book, I still really want to continue, I'm thinking this is going to be 4-star range, somewhere around there. Again, I'm going to allow myself some time to think it over, and I'll let you all know what my official ratings for all these books are at the end. But obviously, Joe, you should be very happy that you recommended this book to me because, yeah, like I was so invested in them. I really care about them, and I really loved Teo's representation. I thought that he was very true to himself, and the amount of learning he gained was just really great, how his confidence built, and also just his actions. He's such a true, pure person, even though he's a bit mischievous. You know, he's not obviously like the golden good boy, but he does do the right thing in the end, and I think that that speaks to how great of a main character he is. We can kind of relate to him. Yeah, I'm really glad that I ended up getting to finally read this book. It's been on my radar for quite some time. So thank you, Jo, so much. And I'm sure you're going to know this, but the various scenes involving Candy were so cute. Oh my gosh. And I really did like Teo's love interest situation too. That was really fun. And I'm actually really excited for book 2. I really want to continue this series, and I'll probably do audio as well because I thought the voice narrator did a really great job. So yeah, I mean, well done. This is great. I'm really excited for the last book that I have to read, which is The Beautiful and Strange... Let me grab it. The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. We're gonna see what happens. This is my last book for the vlog, and I'm really looking forward to it. I thought it was contemporary. For some reason, I just assumed maybe based on the title, but I was reading the synopsis to one of my friends, Danny, about it, and I was like, yeah, contemporary novel. We'll see how it goes. And I started reading it, and then I immediately stopped after I read this sentence. So it follows these twins, Ava and Henry Lavender. Henry is mute for much of his young life, and Ava, in all other ways a normal girl, is born with the wings of a bird. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is this is fantastical, magical realism leaning. All right. So I found that very funny. Also, it's funny that I have another character with wings because Teo has wings. So I think we're getting to know some of Jo's preferences as far as what kind of fantastical elements we like. That's really funny. I don't know if Jo meant for that to happen or not, but I do find that like a very cute comparison. All right, well, I am gonna go start this final book for the vlog. Wish me luck, and I will let you guys know when I reach maybe the halfway point. That actually probably feels pretty good since I did the same thing with the Sunbearer Trials, and they're about the same size. So see you guys at the halfway point. I am a little over halfway with The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender, and this book has cinched it. I think now that I'm halfway through this one, I've read 2.5 books recommended to me by Jo. I understand what kind of reader Jo is. She adores beautiful language, beautiful writing, authors who are willing to take a chance and create a complex family tree, complex societies, whether they are set in the real world with some magical realism or in complex high fantasy societies as well. So Jo, I think I've cracked the code. I think I know what kind of reader you are, and I respect it. I definitely respect it because especially with The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender, this is gorgeous. The writing is beautiful. It is making you think. It is providing a lot of reverie, and the main character, Ava, she's our narrator. She's speaking from a position in the future, I guess we'd say, in the present, reflecting on her childhood back in the 70s, and also just reflecting upon her entire family tree. Because this is a multi-generational read, we have seen a lot of scenes, a lot of development and conflict with the various matriarchs in her family that came before her, and I love that. I don't tend to seek out multi-generational reads, but I do love them when they fall into my lap. So I do really appreciate that. All of the women have been really complex and fascinating and quite different, I would say, in their demeanor and what kind of issues they have to overcome, as well as how their adult lives have turned out compared to their predecessors. I would argue that this is not YA. While there are some conflicts, some experiences that happen to these women when they are young adults, teens, they also are being followed into their 20s or later. So I would argue this is adult. And I'm saying that because I feel as though by labeling it YA, and I promise you I respect YA, I like YA, I obviously really enjoyed the Sunbearer Trials, but I feel like it does a disservice because it cuts off a huge population of readers that might turn their nose to this book just because it's labeled YA. That's more of an issue on the fact that YA is viewed as taboo, as juvenile, even though it's not juvenile because it's YA. We have a juvenile section in our libraries, in our bookstores, but Anyway, that's an issue for another day. I just feel as though this really actually would be better suited for an adult audience. Now, would I refuse to recommend this to someone who fits the YA category, meaning probably traditionally 14 to 17 years old? Absolutely not. I would definitely recommend this to them. But it does have some adult content that I feel as though would be better suited for an adult audience, especially because it's having questions of moral and ethical situations that I'm not really sure are explaining how gray this area is and how these characters are behaving badly at times, and we should kind of make sure that we know that. I'm mainly speaking about examples of infidelity. That's the first thing that's come to my mind, and there are a few examples of that. Now, earlier examples have pretty much demonized the infidel, and that's good. I like that. Yeah, this person sucks, they're terrible, and they are also leaving women in their wake with having to raise children on their own and being single mothers. Now, this most recent example I'm really upset about because it is Vivienne Lavender, Ava's mother, Ava being our protagonist, our narrator. So Vivienne Lavender is in love with this boy, Jack Griffith, and they end up having a night of passion. All while Jack is engaged to be married to another woman. He has told her this. That is kind of the purpose of their meetup during this scene. And then they end up having sex. And well, now we have Ava and Henry, the twins, and their father is Jack. And I'm kind of annoyed that that happened. It's really frustrating when we see that because I really liked Vivienne, and I feel like it could have been designed in a different way because now she's just as bad as Jack. She has hurt someone, she has betrayed someone and partaken in this, and now Jack is viewed as this terrible person when it's like, you both did something. I actually more so feel bad for Lorna, or whatever his fiance's name is. So that's one critique that I have, and that's also why I think that it actually should be in adult fiction. Now, I'm someone who really hates seeing infidelity in books, but I understand that it's part of the complexities of the world we live in. So I would understand why an author might choose to include it, but that's why I kind of am like, this probably shouldn't be in YA, but that might just be a personal choice for me. What's really lovely, I'm going to show you all, is this family tree. Isn't that really gorgeous? And it's really nice. It's really helpful, especially because we are throwing around a lot of names, a lot of characters, but at this point in the narrative, we are predominantly following Ava. And I think that the whole point of the earlier sections following all of the various matriarchs, like her great-grandmother, her grandmother, her mother, now to her, we understand what has culminated into her creation as a twin with her brother Henry, but she has wings. And now I think in this latter half of the book, we're going to be predominantly following her own struggles, her own confusion as to why she exists. Why does she have wings? What does that make her? Is she an angel? Is she part bird? Why is she so strange? And what has led to her creation in the first place? I don't have too many more updates, just the fact that I am enjoying the fact this is historical fiction. It started off in France, then it moved to New York City, and now with Ava and her mother's perspective as well, was set in the Northwest. And I am a sucker for the Northwest. I really love how lush and green and I suppose damp the nature can be. So that's been really lovely. And I actually don't know where this book is going. I actually don't. Now that we have officially found our protagonist, Ava, in the pages, I'm not sure what's going to come next. So I'll let you know when I finish. I finished the book and I really enjoyed it. I really love this author's writing. She writes beautifully and she uses purple prose in a purposeful way. I found it really eloquent and beautiful and eerie at times. There are some moments that are unsettling and disconcerting for the fact that this is YA. I think I'm just gonna have to move forward and mentally put it in the adult category, even though it's advertised and shelved as YA. I'm gonna stick to my guns. I really think this is an adult book. And if it were YA, in my mind, if I allowed myself to think of it that way, my rating would actually go down, because I think that age categorization can impact ratings, and I don't think that that's YA. I think that it's adult. So anyways, so basically my rating moving forward is going to be if I imagine this as an adult book, just because, as I said, there's certain adult content, certain ethical questions that are being answered in kind of questionable ways that I think that adults can process a bit better than maybe a 14-year-old, or at least the average 14-year-old, I should say. But oh my gosh, the way that this book ended, as I said, when I was entering the second half of the book, we finally focused on our titular character, Ava Lavender, and I didn't know what her story would end up being, and it ended up being really action-packed, actually. I was really scared and nervous for her at times. It got into some dark elements. There is this one character who is a religious fanatic, I'll call him, so that might be a content warning for some people. There is sexual content as well in here, as well as the discussions of infidelity, of SA, of domestic violence, whether it be physical or emotional as well. All of these being discussed in here are also my argument for why I think it's adult as far as the nature of the writing goes. But this was really powerful. The ending was really thoughtful. I was really intrigued by this, and I'm not gonna lie, of the three, I might have said this for City of Brass, but if I'm gonna be honest, also, I thought this was contemporary at first. I didn't realize that it was historical magical realism because I'm silly. I was the most nervous for this one. So that's really amazing. I'm going to give myself a breather. I'm going to take a second to collect myself with these three reads, but then I'll come back and let you know my thoughts. Okay, so the camera angle has changed slightly, although I am still in the same dress and hairstyle, meaning it's the same day, but it is definitely a different clip because I had to move around my apartment and find the three books for this vlog. So we started off with City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, the first in the David Bad series, and I think I have settled on a 3.5. I found this really fascinating, but the ending was really jarring for me. The characters were acting in ways that I just didn't think was true to their story arc, and I also had some events happen in the end that make me question if I want to continue, because I'm gonna have to have some things spoiled for me to ensure that it would be worth it for me to keep reading. So that's kind of why I'm landing on a 3.5 for that one. Although Chakraborty, I would 100% read again because I find her to be a really strong writer. This was her debut novel as well, so maybe her newer projects will be more in my wheelhouse. For instance, Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi, that is still on my want to read list. I really do want to try that. Then we ended up switching over to Aidan Thomas's The Sunbearer Trials, the second book recommended to me by Joe, and this was YA fantasy that definitely had a lot of like indigenous / Latinx mythology infused in it that was just so new to me, completely brand new. I loved that the voice narrator provided a great voice to these characters. I loved the cast of characters, like a gang of friends. Teo and Nia were just hilarious together. I loved the love interest involved. I also loved the representation, not only of trans characters, but we also had deaf representation, and it was really fascinating, and I definitely will be continuing the series. So for this one, I'm thinking I'm gonna land on a 4.25. I think that's what I'm gonna land on for this one. If it goes down, when I think about it, it might be 4, but for now, we're gonna go with vibe, and the vibe is saying 4.25. And then we ended the vlog with The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Lesley Walton, a completely new to me author. This was the one book and the one author I'd never heard of before. So thank you, Joe, for introducing this book to me. On top of the fact that this was published back in 2014, I was just talking about that with my subscribers, with people in the comments for reading sprints, because while I'm recording this, I am on sprints, and I didn't even realize that this book is reaching its 10-year anniversary. That is insane. And I'll tell you, as a modern reader, or at least as someone reading this 10 years after its publication, I found it really interesting and beautiful and eerie and creepy, but also just fascinating. These characters, this family tree is so odd and strange, and I actually have hope that maybe magical realism can be for me in certain instances, because this is something that I usually try to avoid. What probably helped is that it's a multi-generational read, that we're following a handful of matriarchs of the women in the family, which 100% is a win, on top of the fact that it's historical fiction. And while I don't like historical fiction by itself, I do like historical fantasy, historical sci-fi, which is probably more alternate history. I like historical mysteries, and this one did have some mystery in it. There were a lot of mysterious elements to this family tree, especially this climactic, dangerous, scary moment for Ava Lavender that I don't want to give away. So yeah, this was really interesting. I am going to stay with a 4. I think I'm going to give it a solid 4 stars, mainly because I just don't think that it should be YA. I am giving it a 4-star as what I'm imagining as an adult novel. If it was YA, I actually would probably lower my rating to maybe a 3.5 or lower, just because I just can't see it really fitting that audience. I know that might be a strange way to reason why you're lowering or raising a rating, but that's how I feel. So if I were to imagine this as an adult, and I think it is, I'm gonna give it 4 stars because I found it really interesting, and I appreciate that I went in blind and was pleasantly surprised. So, oh my gosh, this is definitely a win as far as this vlog goes. Look at these 3 glorious books. The lowest rating I gave was a 3.5. We will take it. And thank you so much, Joe. I know I've thanked you a few times throughout this entire process, but I really do appreciate you taking the chance, because I know that it can be daunting to provide book recommendations that represent yourself, and then you're asking me to decide if I like it or not and showcase it to all of BookTube. So I really do appreciate it, and these were really fascinating reads that I probably wouldn't have picked up anytime soon without your prompting. So this was a successful experiment. And because of that, anyone who's reached the end, make sure that you subscribe to XOJo. I will of course have her linked below in the comments, in the description, because she is lovely and she deserves all the love. And if you could, just go check out her content. Support her in other ways beyond just subscribing, because I swear you will fall in love with her. And we also have our Meet the Booktuber episode 5 coming up. Let me grab the books that I currently have in my possession so we can kind of tease you a little bit. Alright, so for my Meet the Booktuber episode 5, I will be highlighting Brie from 4 Paws and a Book. She's already provided me with the 3 books I have to read, and I have 2 of them in my possession physically, 1 that I have to read on Libby, and those include At First Spite by Olivia Dade. This is going to be my first experience with Olivia Dade. I'm really looking forward to that, and it's her newest publication. I also am going to be reading Darcy Coates, my first time with the Fullcroft Ghost. So 2 authors that I've been meaning to try that I haven't gotten to. And then finally, we have Small Miracles by Olivia Atwaters? Is there more than one? Is there an S at the end? I can't remember, but those are the 3 books that I'm going to be reading for Meet the Booktuber episode 5, and I'm really, really excited. I have 3 completely different genres. I think Small Miracles is fantasy. I could be wrong. We have more horror thriller. I mean, look how spooky this cover is. Darcy Coates definitely knows how to bring the spookies. And then of course we've got a contemporary romance. I'm so excited. This has been such a great experience so far. I can't believe I'm already on episode 5, but it's gonna be great. And I also already have the person I'm doing for episode 6 too. So this is gonna hit 6 months very soon as far as a series on my channel. It's crazy. Thank you all for continuing to support the series, because really it's one of my favorite ones to do on my channel. It actually motivates me to do vlogs, because I find vlogs typically to be super intimidating and kind of anxiety inducing, but this has been really fun because I get to include friends or new people who could become friends in the future and just get to know the BookTube community a little bit better. So if you enjoyed yourselves, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe to Joe, and make sure you subscribe to Brie too, because by the time this is up, she will have posted, potentially, a very important announcement for the Amazing Readathon. You won't want to miss it, so make sure you're subscribed to her as well, and also make sure you're subscribed to me. I guess if you have reached this far in the vlog, I mean, I guess you must like me, because who would watch me for this long and like not subscribe, I guess? I don't know. Anyways, I really do hope to see you all in the next one. And oh, I forgot to mention, comment about any of these books, whether they're ones that I have read for this vlog or plan to read for the next one. I think that's it. Okay, I think we've checked everything off. Okay, I do hope you all have a great day, and I hope to see you in the next one.